everyone, and welcome to Choices Global. This is a program that facilitates discussion among leaders, key leaders in our society and in our community on topics that will revolutionize the world. In today's session, we will be focused on evangelism in the marketplace, using the insights, intelligence, and outstanding wisdom like Daniel. We're we're here today. We have some phenomenal speakers. There are five of them who will be joining us, and I'm happy to introduce those speakers to today's session. First, we have Kirk Corbin, who is currently based in Switzerland. He is a security management and logistics professional. He's joined by Gavin Walker, who is a pastor for several years and is an unemployment insurance consultant. We also will be hearing from Dylan Thompson, the assistant pastor, youth leader, and representative who works full time with the Interschool Christian Fellowship. We also have Chevon Corbin joining us today, who is a finance specialist based in Switzerland. And finally, we're joined by Marissa Masayo, an HR specialist and child rights and youth advocate, all on the topic evangelism in the marketplace. Welcome, speakers. It's a pleasure to have you all here today in today's session. And as we discuss the topic of evangelism in the marketplace, I would first like to hear from you all what your experience has been in the marketplace, whether you're in unemployment, as we've heard, some of you are in finance, there are also persons in government, telemarketing, construction. How have you utilized or leveraged your faith to positively influence your marketplace? And I will direct this first question to Gavin Walker.
Well, thanks again for allowing me to be a part of this panel group addressing this whole topic of evangelism in the work marketplace. Um, I think I can truly say it, living in the US, especially in Columbus, Ohio. It is a place where where you have so many different cultures, and not only cultures, but you have an employer who has certain standards and rules, and they're trying to accommodate everyone. And so certain things are allowed, certain things are not allowed, and so you have a situation where you're not allowed to share your faith in the marketplace. But one of the things that I have that has helped me is, sometimes I would wear just a simple thing that says stress free, or I have something on my desk that would indicate, hey, I am bubbly, or I'm excited today. And that in itself stimulates or causes people to ask questions. And as a result of that, you engage in a conversation, and you're able to say, well, you know what? You're able to share your faith through that. And I'm able to say, well, you know what? I'm who I am today because of Jesus. I wasn't always like this. And that leads from one thing to the next to the next. So while things might be tough and difficult, I think you have to find a way and ask for wisdom. Ask God for wisdom, and He's going to give you the wisdom.
Yes, thank you for that insightful approach that you've utilized in your community, Gavin. And I was particularly intrigued by the fact that you mentioned, you would wear branded material to really connect with your community in a simple way, but you still leverage your faith. And um, I'd even redirect this question to Chevon. How have you utilized or leveraged your faith in your marketplace?
Thank you for that, Jubilanti. Working in Geneva, Switzerland, I would say I work in both a high intensity and competitive environment. And so, one of the things or one of the skill sets that I believe is of value and which comes from my deep faith is the ability to respond in crisis, the ability to be agile in finding solutions to global problems because I work in a global health institution that finances grants across Africa, Asia, the Caribbean, and Latin America, and even Eastern Europe. And so, one of the ways that I respond with my faith is when there are difficult or complex problems, I'm there, always quick with a solution, always willing to help. And then when I sit down and, I walk someone through what is the issue, what are the solutions, how do we mitigate the bottlenecks or risks in the future, then the questions are always asked, how come you're always calm? How come you're always willing to help? And that's when I have an opportunity to share about my faith and the fact that the insights, the wisdom that I receive from an authority that is above me is what I bring to the marketplace and bring to leadership as I engage in my community.
Excellent, excellent feedback, Siobhan. And I say excellent because coming from both yourself and Gavin, I hear a common thread that evangelism in the marketplace or sharing our faith in the marketplace doesn't have to be something grand or something that is what the modern community calls super spiritual, but it can be something that is simple, practical, relatable, how we usually conduct ourselves that draws our community in. And so I'm curious to know, Marissa, how you engage with young people and children, and even in your work in the HR sector, in terms of using and leveraging your faith to impact your marketplace.
All right, thank you so much, Jubilante. For me, it's important not to walk with, this badge of I'm a Christian. I think people have been wounded by that a lot. And so what I have done is I lead with my character. And I think that is one of the most important things that you can lead with as a Christian is show people how you have been impacted by the same word that you believe. So your character is one. And I think the other one is your work ethic. For me, that is, Shawan spoke to being calm in crisis. I think your work ethic and your stick to itiveness and your ability to navigate the dark paths, the unknown sometimes. I think the light that God gives to you as a Christian helps you to be able to navigate those streams successfully. Another thing too with children, especially and young people, is branding. There was somebody who shared this with me, and so there's this butterfly. It's an earring, and I love butterflies and bling. But the story of the butterfly, the metamorphosis of a butterfly, is very transformative. It shows what you can become if you have this added divine power on your side. And so, just like how a butterfly can transform from a caterpillar into this beautiful creature, it's the same way that Jesus can transform all of our ugliness into something that's beautiful. And that's the gift that we give to the world. Does that mean as a Christian we always have to be on or always have to be bubbly or always have to be stress free? Not exactly. And I think it's how we lead people during those moments when it's not nice and it's not it's full of stress and it could probably be even depressing, but it's how we show that we are believers in Christ through those moments, and how we distinguish ourselves and our service to God. That's what make people go, it's just something that's just different about this person. What is it? And then you have an opportunity to share. And you're just sharing. This is my life. This is my lifestyle. This is my belief system. I'm not asking you to join. I'm not forcing it down your throat. But you asked me, and this is who I am, and this is why I am the way I am. If you're interested, I can show you a better way. And that's how I think we're most effective at sharing Christ and sharing kingdom in the world today.
Really appreciate that feedback, Marissa. And in terms of it being so relatable. And there are several things that stood out to me, but the ones that I did want to highlight was one you mentioned, butterflies and bling. And I took a cue on that because not only is it, a good slang or branding, but it shows that you connect with your community or the culture. In this present day youth, butterflies and bling. I thought of that as a great way of connecting with culture. And further, I'm using this and the additional point to lead into the next question, being that further you mentioned that it's how we lead persons in those moments of stress or in depressing moments. And for all of you, you've been exposed to different cultures in Guyana and outside of Guyana. And the next question pertains to how do you manage or how should we manage when we are engaging cross cultural evangelism? And I'm going to redirect this question to Kurt. I'm curious to know how you've managed cross cultural evangelism coming from Guyana, English speaking Guyana, to French speaking Switzerland, and how you've engaged your community.
Thank you, Jubilante. Excellent question. As you can see, I'm smiling. Um, the first thing I would want to say is that since the languages are different, you have to learn the language. As you learn the language, and as you live in the society or in the community, you must immerse yourself in that community so that you can have a better understanding of how they are, how they operate, what they do, what they say, the nuances that people do not necessarily say. So the first thing you have to do is become one with the community and let your light shine, as all the other panelists already said. What they're saying is that they allow their light to shine in whichever marketplace they are, and marketplace is a general term, not necessarily the market. So once you're in your community, for me, I could speak about me. When we came here, I went to school so I can learn the language. So why? Because part of my job is evangelizing as well, by my lifestyle, by my conduct, by the things I say, by the things I do. So if I can't say my lifestyle and the thing and my conduct, you can see. But if I can't say, then I can't evangelize. I can't speak. I can't relate to you. So I went to school and I learned the language. So now, in learning the language, as the formal language, now you have to learn the unofficial, or as we say, colloquial language. So you can better have you can have a better sense of your neighbor, of the person next to you. Our boys are into a lot of sports, so when you go to sporting environment, there's always the coffee, and everyone wants to talk and so forth. Actually, my wife calls me Helling Haynes. That's a column we have back home or had back home a few years ago. Ellen Haynes would always give you advice. Somehow, these parents would come up to me and they would share their personal stories, especially with their children. And they claim your boys are always so well behaved. Why can't they be like your boys? And then you get it, and I get a chance to share with them. How come our boys are well behaved? You see, it began from youth. What we instill in them, how we teach them how to respect, how to obey, how what different cultures, as we know, some cultures are more open, so the children can speak back, and as they get older, it becomes a problem in some households. So I would share who we are, who I am, and how we've raised our boys, and Christian values. I would actually use the word. So in my little space, even when I'm working, and even when I was working, I would share, who am I? They were like, why are you always smiling? I'm smiling because everything is good inside. It may not be the best at home. Know who is in charge. So I would say in closing, the first thing you need to do is immerse yourself in the community, learn how they speak, learn the nuances, learn the language, and then allow your light to shine, your good light to shine.
That was you're leaving me speechless with your response, Kurt. Speechless because you've caused me to think of that being a light in our community creates a pathway or an introduction, a platform for persons to become introduced to godlike uh, characteristics and to godlike principles. It is not As Marissa mentioned earlier, it's not, shouting Christian or speaking Christian or promoting I'm a Christian in your space or in your environment, but it's really how do you conduct yourself that causes the outside world to say, I wonder where's this person from? And so I'm curious to hear from Dylan on you are exposed to the school environment. There are different cultures across Guyana. How have your experiences been in managing cross cultural evangelism?
All right, was such a wonderful question. I think the answers that came before were wonderfully done as well. For me, it's a matter of consistency. I think Marissa earlier spoke about character. I have found that as long as young people, especially, see that you are consistent in who you say you are or who you are presented to be, then they respect you. Once they respect you, then they will speak to you, they will open up to you. I've also found being able to listen, having an understanding, in order to be an influence and to have an impact, it has to be something deliberate. In order for it to be deliberate, and we have to focus on who we want to impact, who we want to influence, and listen to them. We have to gain an understanding of who they are. Many times person go into a particular environment with stereotypes or preconceived notions of who young people are, who they are, and who they think, and so forth. But really and truly, you have to go into the environment, you have to observe. I work with over 30 schools, and each school, I can tell you, is different. The young people at each school are different. How then do I make an impact? You have to go into the school and you have to observe, have to listen, understand the young people, not putting them down, not saying to a young child, you don't have nothing to be stressed out about or why you're taking on problems, but just respecting everyone at their level, respecting everyone where they are, listening to everyone, and just having an understanding of people, who they are, where they're coming from. And in closing, I would also like to say respect goes a very long way. Where I live, wherever I operate, I'm known for one thing, and that's being respectful. I don't pass anyone straight. I say hello, good morning, whatever the case is, so that afterwards, when people find out that I'm a Christian, it makes sense to them that yes, this person has to be a brother because of how he operates.
That was indeed great great approach that you have adopted to your community, Dylan, and particularly I was really impressed not just at the use of learning the language of your community, because learning the language of your community may not only be limited to, let's say, learning Spanish or learning French or learning Italian, but learning the language of your may also relate to how do the people in your community engage, treat with each other, and how can you adopt a similar engagement. That way, the persons are, more in tune. And I'll just give a simple example because I did want to hear from Gavin, hearing him mention that his congregation is diverse, his community is diverse in Ohio. I often think of the illustration of someone from Georgetown going to live in the indigenous communities, and it may not be indigenous Amerindian community, maybe a rural community that has a mix, but let's say they speak English like us, but it may be a different type of Creole English. So we have a different version of Creolese. And there are certain words, if we use it in Georgetown, it might mean a particular thing, but in that community, it means something totally different. And so while we speak the same or similar language, there are nuances and there are things that will resonate more with that community if you say it in a particular way than if you say it in the Georgetown way. So for me, I did want to hear from Pastor Gavin on how he has navigated such a diverse community in Ohio, coming from Guyana, bringing the Guyanese energy, but then also having to adapt to the needs of that community, even if they were needs of other Guyanese that may have been from other parts.
That's a very good question, and I'll answer that question by sharing one of my experiences. Um, I remember I there was a young lady that had approached, and I know her, and I knew her husband was incarcerated, and I asked her, "How is your husband doing?" And her color changed, and she said to me, "It's only because I know you and who you are." But do you know what that word "huzzy" means? I was like, no. Well, huzzy is a husband who pimps his wife. It goes to show culture. Now, we have to understand the culture we're in and understand who we're dealing with. Now, she was able to enlighten me about, that's not a good term to use, but coming from Guyana, huzzy simply means husband. And and I think that opened my eyes to the fact that we have to learn the culture, understand what we should do or should not do. And even when we go into the community to evangelize, we have to. I remember going into this one community and I was like, how do we go in? How do we let the people know that here, we're here for them? We're not just here to present Jesus to them. But and I came up with this idea. I want to say, not my idea, I think it was God inspired. Everyone likes to pray, or everyone wants prayer. So I said, we're going into the community not to talk about Jesus per se. We're going into community and we're going to ask. We're here from Calvary Christian Fellowship, and we are here just to pray for different ones. 95% of the people responded to that. As compared if we were just going, people see us coming in with a Bible or a tract in our hands. No, we're not interested. But it just goes to show, if you understand who you're dealing with, you understand that, listen, find out what's common. And what's common, use that to your advantage in the whole process of evangelism. And that was successful. We had Jews wanted to pray, we had Muslim wanted prayer, we had people inviting us into their homes and calling out family members. But it's just getting into the community, know who you're dealing with, and know what would work and what would not work.
Very insightful, Gavin. Particularly blown away by 95% of the persons responding to the call for prayer. And it's interesting that prayer gives us access to communities because our next question, actually, for this next question, I wanted us to consider how can we access communities, particularly where we have an interplay of different, not only cultures, but powerful figures. To get access into a particular community, well, first, if you have to travel to a new community, you need a permit, you need government, you need a minister, you need someone in power to facilitate a new entry into community. And so, from Chevron having that experience in the financial sector as a consultant in Switzerland, could you list or identify any remedies or approaches that evangelists can use when treating with power or access to power in the marketplace?
Thanks, Juby. And I'm really enjoying the discourse, hearing from Gavin, Marissa, and Della and Kurt as well. When you reflect on power and how you access a community, there are two things, and it stays with the whole notion of evangelism. Evangelism is about going and telling. It's about, I like to say, it's even mass communication. But oftentimes, where Marissa sits, she has a sphere of influence, but that may be limited, like you said, by a border. And the way in which we get or we break down the barriers, whether it's communicating on an individual level with someone from a different culture, someone from a different religion, even, or someone from a completely different region, from Asia to Africa, from Latin America to Europe, I believe there are two things. One is around empathizing or acknowledging the issues or problems that someone has. When a country or a company or a person has a problem and you acknowledge and you can present the solutions, you have immediate access. If we look at the account of Daniel, Daniel was an outsider in the kingdom in which he was operating, but he had the wisdom, he had the foresight, the insight that was given by God to interpret the king's dreams. And so we look at Joseph as another example. And so these biblical accounts or kingdom examples demonstrate that when you are given wisdom from a divine source, you will come with solutions that will allow persons to open the doors, open the airports, open to let you in. So I believe having the solutions to a problem is one of the first things. And as kingdom persons, we need to operate at a different level, operate at the highest level, so that we can open those doors to take the gospel and the kingdom message to the ends of the earth. The second one I want to signal is that we must cultivate our networks. I believe, and I reference the sphere of influence, each one of us on this platform can influence maybe 100 persons, maybe 200. Marissa probably has a following of 1,000 if we check her social media, and then multiply that as she passes her message along. And so networks are important. And again, the biblical account of Nehemiah, he had a network in the kingdom because of where he worked. He had access to power, and he himself would have been powerful. And because of how he would have executed his duties when he wanted to go back to rebuild Jerusalem, his home country or his home city, he was not only able to leverage his network or, his, how do I say, connection with the king, but he even went further to ask the king to write letters so that I could get the resources I need, and write letters so that I could have safe passage. And I like to reflect on those letters as the visas, where he was allowed to transition from where he was working. He was like one working in the diaspora, like myself, like Kurt, and even Gavin, even though I know he calls both the US and Guyana home. But there you have the biblical account of Nehemiah, where he leveraged his network. And I would like to say that he asked the king for these letters, which give him access to do cross-border work, transitioning from the diaspora back to his home country. And so this would be my challenge to us viewers. Whether you're in leadership, whether you're in ministry, whether you are in your family, you have a network, it is powerful. Leverage it for positive action. And like I said, connect with the problems. At my workplace, I work with persons of different denominations or religious beliefs. And the way that I have connected with them, as Marissa said, is simply by my work ethic. They understand that I stand for excellence. They understand that I am always willing to mentor or coach. And these are the beginnings of relationships that I've developed even with colleagues of a Muslim orient or Islamic orientation. I've had colleagues ask me to pray for them simply because of their respect for what you do. And I believe this is something that Delon also referenced. I'll stop there. I'm sure others have some thoughts to weigh in on.
Excellent, Chevron, and I I see that embedded in our evangelism. In our evangelism, it's how we treat with power and access to power in the marketplace, and leveraging our networks for positive impact in the marketplace. So, Dylan, I did want to hear from you. How have you engaged with power in the marketplace, or having access to power and utilizing that access to create positive change?
Okay, well, even as I listened to Siobhan speak just now, one thing keep coming to mind, and that is results. Um, as we approach or access power and persons in power, people look for results. So, as kingdom citizens, we are not approaching persons to beg a favor. We're not approaching persons just to ask for anything. We are approaching persons with results. Even as Siobhan mentioned, she said that she's a person of excellence. So as we make our approach, we are going and we're saying, listen, this is what I am bringing to the table. Even as we look at scripture, we see, well, okay, Daniel was promoted and so forth. But why was he promoted? He was promoted because he brought something, he brought a need, he brought results to the table. Even in my field of work, as I approach a head teacher and I say, well, these are the things that we want to do or we wish to do or so forth. I'm not just going to stop there. But I'm going to say, well, this has been the results in the past or in previous places, in previous schools. This has been the impact of this. This is what we have been doing. And this is what doing this here at this school, this is what this can bring about. If you allow this, if you give us the access that we're asking for, this can be the results, and this is how you and the school can benefit. So even as I listened to Siobhan there, I was just thinking in my own head and just personalizing it. And what I thought about was results. We bring something to the table.
Thank you very much, Dylan. And as we begin to wrap up today's session, I do have final two questions that I will direct to Kurt first, and then Marissa. For your final thoughts, Kurt, on how, as a security professional, security and logistics professional, can we evangelize safely in hostile environments and marketplaces? And to Marissa, what would your advice be to children who are taught to disregard kingdom principles as ancient and outdated? So, Kurt,
Thank you, Jubilanti. Yes, how do you evangelize in hostile environment? Um, Again, the main principle, your baseline principle, my principle is the way I conduct myself. Your yes must be yes, and your no must be no. Once you begin to waver between and become someone of a shaky character, and you're not a man or a person of your word, well then your character and whatever influence you can bring, it goes out of the window. We spoke about power shortly in the security environment. I had a lot of power, and in the security environment, you would have a lot of power because you can tell someone go and they have to go. You can tell someone no and it is no. So how do you utilize that power? How do you use that power for influence? Because power is the capacity to influence as well, not just to drive something or to move something, but to influence people. When you can influence, you have significant power. So as you are in that environment and persons, for whatever reason, may want to become hostile towards you, you have to rise above that level. You have to show that you are not afraid. And that strength, that inner strength comes from one source, and that our source is the Heavenly Father. Now, as you live your life, as you allow your words to speak exactly what you say and mean exactly what you say, persons will come to respect you. So their hostility will you cannot remain hostile with someone who is nice to you, who's kind to you, who's trying to help you. So it's important that your attitude and the things you do and say pierce that person's heart so that they can understand that this is not this is not the person that I should be hostile with. This person is always kind to me. Marissa?
Yeah, Kurt, I'll say this very shortly. Uh, One of the things with children is that you have in your heart what you want to be. And when you know who you are, as a child inside, you may not be able to express it to anyone around you, but you can use positive role models around you. For example, the person that taught me about the butterfly, one of my mentors, is the institution Dr. Shirley Hart. She is phenomenal and willing and open, teaching about, teaching what you should do, how you should do it, this is the way you should go, and just sharing her life. And I think as children, if you figure out where you want to be, uh, you know in your heart, I might want to be an engineer. Now start looking around for engineers, or start looking around for persons who can be positive role models for your intended profession. And also you look around for persons who you would like to be like in terms of your character. And so if you try to find those role models around you, then you'll be able to see the principles that they've built their life on, and then you'll be able to model yourself after similar principles. And so whether that be in the marketplace, as we would say professionally, or that would be character based or personality based. Find those godly characters and try to pin yourselves on these principles, because time will change, people will change, circumstances will change, but who you are and your principles that guide you will be able to translate any environment. And that's why I say, choose good people to be mentors. Juby?
Thank you. Thank you, Marissa, and thank you, Kurt. You both caused me to think about a quote that my school had for one of our graduations: changing times on changing principles. And with that, I leave the audience with thank you, speakers, for your excellent presentations. I was blown away. And I'm sure that the audience will be too, and be transformed in how they approach and engage their own communities and environments. To the viewers, thank you for watching today's session. I hope that you enjoyed. And the next session will be aired on the 18th of December. See you then. Thank you.